Hey warriors. You ever notice how the moment you try to rise, the people closest to you suddenly get uncomfortable? That's because remaining average isn't accidental, it's socially enforced. You were taught to call it balance, being realistic, or contentment. But what it really does is keep you predictable, controllable, and emotionally obedient. Most people don't remain average because they lack ability. They remain average because escaping would cost them approval, belonging, and safety. Fear is the quiet architect of the average life. Fear of rejection, fear of being talked about, fear of being labeled intense, obsessed, arrogant, or out of touch. From an early age, you absorbed an unspoken rule. Don't outgrow the people around you. Don't want more than your environment thinks is reasonable. Don't move so fast that others feel left behind. Every time you obeyed that rule, you traded potential for acceptance. Look around. You already know people who could be far more than they are. Intelligent people, capable people, disciplined people. Yet they live ordinary lives, repeating familiar routines, telling the same stories, defending the same limitations. It isn't because they can't do more. It's because doing more would isolate them emotionally. And isolation is the pain most people will do anything to avoid. Before we go any further, make a conscious decision. Subscribe. Not out of habit, but because what comes next will challenge the emotional bargains you've been making for years. Here's the first truth you were never taught to face. Average isn't neutral. It's a choice made under pressure. A pressure so subtle it feels like wisdom. Be grateful. Don't rock the boat. Know your place. These phrases don't sound like commands. They sound like maturity, but maturity that asks you to shrink is just obedience in a suit. Think about your own life. How many times did you soften your ambition so others wouldn't feel threatened? How many times did you delay growth because now isn't the right time? How many times did you downplay discipline so you wouldn't look extreme? Those weren't logical decisions. They were emotional negotiations. You were paying a social tax to remain accepted. That tax compounds quietly. Over time, you stop believing you're capable of more. You start confusing comfort with contentment. You start calling fear balance. And once that happens, mediocrity no longer needs to be enforced from the outside. You enforce it yourself. This is how control becomes internal. Society doesn't need to stop you once you've learned to stop yourself. You hesitate before trying. You edit your goals before anyone else can criticize them. You shrink your dreams to fit the room you're in. Average becomes a habit, not a circumstance. And habits are harder to break than rules because they feel like choices. The most dangerous part is how reasonable it all sounds. I'm just being practical. I don't want to change too much. I'm happy where I am. These sentences feel responsible, but often they're emotional shields. They protect you from the discomfort of growth. Growth demands friction. Growth demands seasons with no applause. Average avoids that price by lowering the ceiling. And once the ceiling lowers, you don't notice it day to day. You only feel it years later, when you realize how far you could have gone and how quietly you decided not to. That realization doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in slowly. At first, it feels like mild dissatisfaction. Then it turns into a quiet irritation. Eventually, it becomes regret. Not dramatic regret. Worse, the dull awareness that you settled in small, invisible ways long before you ever said the words out loud. Average doesn't announce itself. It convinces you gently. Watch how groups behave when one person starts changing. Not in speeches, but in behavior. The jokes become sharper, the invitations become fewer, the concern becomes performative. Are you okay? You've changed. You're doing too much. These aren't questions, they're corrections. Signals meant to pull you back into alignment. Because when one person rises, everyone else is forced to confront the distance between who they are and who they could be. Most people retreat here, not because they lack strength, but because belonging feels safer than potential. This is the first trap Machiavelli would recognize. People fear losing love more than losing power, so they choose the path that preserves connection, even if it slowly erodes self-respect. And self-respect, once traded away, is hard to reclaim. You've felt that erosion, the quiet sense that you're capable of more, but somehow stuck. That feeling isn't laziness, it's suppressed ambition. Ambition that learned early it would be punished socially if it showed itself too clearly. So it hid, it waited, it learned to call compromise realism. Average became a shelter from social pain, but shelters become cages when you stay too long. Peace with others slowly turns into war with yourself. The longer that war lasts, the quieter your inner voice becomes. You stop trusting your instincts, you delay decisions, you look for permission instead of direction. This is how powerful potential turns into polite mediocrity. Machiavelli understood this without modern language. He saw that those who seek to please everyone end up powerless. Love feels good, but it makes you dependent. Fear feels dangerous, but it makes you decisive. The average life is built on dependency, on reassurance, approval, and validation. Power is built on autonomy. Autonomy requires emotional strength, the ability to disappoint, the ability to be misunderstood, the ability to walk alone without narrating your reasons. Most people never train this muscle. They outsource courage to the group. And once you outsource courage, you inherit the group's limits. This is why ambition is praised in theory, but punished in practice. Why discipline is admired from a distance, but resented up close. Why success stories are celebrated only when they're safely removed by time or geography. The contradiction isn't accidental. It's how most people stay average while telling themselves they chose it. Once you see this pattern, it becomes impossible to unsee. You notice how often people stop at the edge of social comfort, not the edge of their ability. They mistake approval for progress. They confuse familiarity with safety. And over time, that stopping point hardens into identity. Average is not who they were born to be. It's where they learn to stop. And that stopping point feels invisible because it's never announced. No one tells you, this is as far as you're allowed to go. Instead, the limits arrive disguised as wisdom, as tradition, as concern, as advice that sounds reasonable enough to obey without questioning. This is how average survives. It hides inside language that feels safe. You hear it in phrases like, be patient, don't rush, you've already done well. Each one sounds supportive. Each one quietly asks you to pause your momentum. Momentum makes people nervous because momentum doesn't ask for consensus. It moves. And movement exposes stagnation. So stagnation pushes back with politeness. Machiavelli wrote that the vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances. What he understood was that most people judge by comfort, not by truth. They reward what feels familiar and punish what feels disruptive. Excellence disrupts. It creates contrast. Contrast forces comparison, and comparison is painful for anyone who has chosen not to grow. This is why resistance is your compass. When you move towards something meaningful, friction appears. Average culture teaches you to interpret friction as danger. In reality, friction is confirmation. It means you've reached the boundary of conformity. Most people turn back at that boundary because they think they've gone too far. In truth, they've only just arrived. Look at how fear behaves here. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It asks questions that sound responsible. Is this worth it? What if you lose people? What if you fail publicly? Fear frames retreat as maturity, but maturity that avoids risk is just obedience with better vocabulary. The awareness phase begins when you stop asking whether growth is worth the cost and start asking what staying average will cost you. That question changes everything, because the cost of average is delayed, not immediate. It arrives quietly in your 30s, 40s, 50s. It shows up as resentment, as bitterness, as nostalgia for paths not taken, as the ache of unrealized ability. You've seen it in others. People who talk about what they used to want, who explain why their dreams were unrealistic, who mock ambition as if it were naive. That mocking is armor. It protects them from confronting the truth that they surrendered something important for comfort. Average becomes permanent when people justify it, when they defend their limitations as wisdom, when they attack those who still dare to want more. This is where mediocrity becomes aggressive. It doesn't just settle, it recruits. It pressures others to join so no one has to feel alone in their compromise. This is the point where your awareness must harden into resolve. Not anger, not arrogance. Resolve. A quiet understanding that the discomfort you're feeling is not a signal to stop, but a signal to stabilize, to build strength where you're weak, to prepare for the solitude that comes with independence. Solitude is not the same as loneliness. Loneliness is wanting validation. Solitude is choosing focus. Average fears solitude because solitude removes the crowd's influence. Without the crowd, you hear yourself clearly. And most people don't trust their own voice enough to sit with it. You're learning to sit with it now, to listen without flinching, to move without permission, to accept that not everyone will understand the direction you're taking. That acceptance is the doorway out of average, because once you stop needing approval to proceed, nothing external can keep you small. From here, the path narrows. Fewer people, fewer distractions, fewer excuses. And in that narrowing, something powerful begins to form. Not excitement, not confidence, but clarity. Clarity changes how you experience resistance. It no longer feels personal. It feels structural. You see the pattern instead of the insult. When someone questions your discipline, you recognize the threat it poses to their comfort. When someone downplays your ambition, you hear the echo of their own compromise. This isn't contempt, it's understanding. And understanding gives you composure. Composure is rare. It's the ability to hold your direction steady while others react emotionally. Average culture reacts. It reacts to trends, to moods, to approval, to fear. You stop reacting and start deciding. That shift alone separates trajectories. Decisions compound. Reactions cancel each other out. This is where most people get confused. They expect empowerment to feel like confidence. Loud, energized, certain. Instead, it feels like quiet resolve, like choosing the same difficult action again without applause, like waking up early when no one is watching, like saying no without explaining. It's not glamorous, it's effective. Machiavelli warned that those who attempt change will face enemies from those who benefited from the old order. Average is an order. It benefits people by protecting them from comparison and responsibility. When you step outside it, you disrupt that protection. Resistance is not a sign of wrongdoing. It's the cost of innovation in any human system. Pay attention to how guilt tries to reassert control. Here, you'll feel it when you miss social events to train or work, when you invest time in yourself instead of being available, when you prioritize long-term outcomes over short-term harmony. Guilt frames these choices as betrayal. But betrayal of what? An unspoken agreement to remain small together. You don't owe anyone your stagnation. That sentence will challenge you. Let it. Obligation to stay average is a social myth used to maintain comfort. The people who truly care about you will adapt to your growth. Those who don't were attached to the version of you that made them feel secure. This realization is heavy. It can feel like loss. Because it is. You're losing the illusion that everyone comes with you. but you're gaining something more valuable: integrity, the alignment between what you know you can do and what you actually do. Integrity restores energy that compromise drains. With integrity comes momentum, not the frantic kind, the steady kind. You stop starting and stopping. You stop bargaining with distractions. You build routines that don't depend on mood. Routines create reliability. Reliability builds trust, with yourself first, then with others. Trust with yourself is foundational. Without it, ambition collapses under pressure. With it, you don't need external reassurance. You know what you'll do tomorrow because you did it yesterday. That consistency quiets doubt. Doubt thrives on inconsistency. Remove the fuel and it fades. Average tries one last tactic here: nostalgia. It reminds you of how things used to feel: easier, lighter, more social. Nostalgia is selective memory. It forgets the frustration, the envy, the quiet dissatisfaction. It remembers only the comfort. Don't confuse comfort with progress. Comfort is where growth goes to sleep. You're awake now. Awake to the cost of settling. Awake to the mechanics of control. Awake to the reality that a life without friction is a life without expansion. This awareness isn't harsh. It's honest, and honesty, once accepted, simplifies everything. From this point forward, the question isn't whether you'll be challenged. You will. The question is whether you'll mistake challenge for a reason to stop. You won't, because you understand now that challenge is the language of change, and you've decided to listen. That decision alters how you move through the world. You stop rushing to be understood. You stop explaining your choices to people who haven't earned context. You let confusion exist without trying to correct it. This is not arrogance, it's efficiency. Explanation is emotional labor. When you reduce it, you reclaim energy for execution. Execution is where average quietly collapses. Average depends on intention without follow-through. It survives on plans, not patterns. You're building patterns now. Small, repeatable actions that don't care how you feel. This is why your days start to feel cleaner. Less debate, less friction, fewer internal negotiations. You do what you said you would do. That alone puts you ahead of most people. Machiavelli understood that power is maintained by those who remove randomness from outcomes. Randomness feels exciting, but it keeps you dependent on luck. Structure reduces luck's influence. When your effort is applied consistently, at the same time toward the same aim, results stop being surprising. Predictability becomes strength. And strength doesn't need to announce itself. Notice how your relationship with time changes. You become more protective of it, not out of selfishness, but out of clarity. You see how easily time dissolves in distraction, in conversations that go nowhere, in obligations that serve appearances instead of outcomes. Cutting these out doesn't make you cold. It makes you focused. Focus is rare. Rare things are valuable. This is also where average people misunderstand you most. They think you become rigid, serious, distant. What they don't see is the freedom you've gained by choosing fewer things deliberately. When you say no more often, your yes carries weight. When your yes carries weight, people listen. Authority begins here, not in dominance, but in selectivity. Your inner dialogue continues to simplify. You no longer ask, "Am I allowed to want this?" You ask, "What must I build to sustain it?" That shift moves you from fantasy to strategy. Strategy doesn't care about opinions. It cares about leverage. What compounds? What endures? What reduces dependency? These questions quietly dismantle average thinking. You also begin to notice how often people confuse movement with progress. Busy schedules, endless meetings, constant activity. Motion without direction is just exhaustion. You choose direction first, then movement. This is why your effort feels lighter even when you're doing more. It's aligned. Alignment removes drag. At this stage, impatience may surface. You'll want visible proof, external confirmation that you're on the right path. This is another test. Average needs proof before commitment. You're committing before proof, not blindly, deliberately. Because you understand compounding, you know that early stages are quiet by design. Think of a seed underground. There's no applause, no evidence, just consistent conditions, water, time, pressure. Breakthrough happens later, all at once. Average people dig up the seed to check progress. You leave it planted. That patience is not passive, it's informed. And here's the deeper change. You stop comparing trajectories. Comparison pulls you back into the crowd's tempo. You set your own pace. Slow where precision matters. Fast where momentum is earned. This pacing is a form of dominance. You are no longer moved by external clocks. You're not chasing separation. Separation is happening as a consequence of discipline. As your habits solidify, the distance grows naturally, not in status, but in mindset. You think in systems while others think in moments. You plan in years while others react in weeks. Average cannot follow you here. It doesn't have the patience. It doesn't have the tolerance for delayed reward. You do. And that tolerance is becoming your edge, quiet, durable, and increasingly undeniable. That edge doesn't announce itself. It settles into your posture, your voice, the way you handle pressure. You're no longer rushed by urgency because you're not chasing validation. You're building inevitability. And inevitability has a calming effect. It removes the need to prove anything today. This is where familiarity becomes the real threat. Familiar routines, familiar conversations, familiar ceilings disguised as wisdom. Familiarity whispers, "You've come far enough." It tempts you to settle right before compounding accelerates. Many people quit here, not from weakness, but from boredom. The drama is gone. The struggle is quiet. All that remains is repetition. And repetition is where average tries to slip back in. You counter it with emotional control, not intensity, control. You stop looking for novelty and start respecting consistency. You don't need the rush of starting. You need the discipline of continuing when the novelty dies. This phase separates those who flirt with excellence from those who embody it. It's unglamorous, it's quiet, it works. Pay attention to how your environment responds now. Fewer comments, less resistance, more distance. This isn't approval, it's recalibration. People adjust when they realize you're not coming back. They may not cheer, but they stop pulling. Silence replaces pressure. Silence here is progress. Machiavelli would recognize this as consolidation, the stage after disruption where power is stabilized. Disruption is loud, consolidation is invisible. Average people only understand noise, so they mistake silence for stagnation. You understand it as focus. Your standards begin enforcing themselves. You don't need to announce them. Your behavior does the work. You arrive prepared. You leave when it's unproductive. You choose depth over breadth. These choices accumulate into reputation. Reputation compounds faster than talent because it precedes you. People assume competence before you speak. There's a temptation now to soften again, to be nice, to explain, to reconnect on old terms. Resist it, not with hostility, but with consistency. Consistency is the most respectful boundary. It doesn't argue, it persists. Over time, it teaches people how to treat you. Notice how your internal dialogue simplifies even more. Fewer debates, fewer justifications. You act, review, adjust. This loop replaces rumination. Rumination keeps people average because it feels productive while producing nothing. Action, even imperfect, creates feedback. Feedback creates improvement. Improvement creates distance. This is the rhythm now. act, learn, repeat. No drama, no announcement, just accumulation. You're no longer proving anything to anyone. You're building something for yourself. And that shift from proving to building is the final structural break from average. From here, empowerment isn't a feeling. It's a pattern you execute daily, quietly, relentlessly. Patterns don't care about moods. They don't negotiate with fear. They run. And once your life runs on patterns instead of moods, average has no entry point left. And when average has no entry point, something subtle happens to your sense of identity. You stop asking who you are and start trusting what you do. Identity becomes behavior, not a story you tell yourself. This is dangerous in the best way because it removes the need for self-justification. You don't defend your discipline, you demonstrate it. You don't argue for your standards, you live by them. People respond to this without understanding it. Conversations shift, they listen more, they test you less, they adjust their expectations. This isn't intimidation, it's coherence. When your actions align consistently, others feel the stability. Stability creates trust. Trust creates influence. Influence is not persuasion, it's gravity. People move around what feels solid. Machiavelli understood that power consolidates after the noise fades. First comes resistance, then distance, then quiet acknowledgement. You're in that third phase now. Not applause, not validation, acceptance. Acceptance that you are no longer available for the old rules, that you don't need consensus to proceed. This phase demands patience. Results may lag behind effort. Recognition may be absent. This is where many people look back, searching for reassurance. You look forward. You understand compounding. You know that consistency always wins later, even if it feels invisible now. You're not building for praise. You're building for inevitability. Notice how your emotional reactions continue to flatten. Highs don't make you reckless. Lows don't derail you. You don't celebrate prematurely. You don't catastrophize setbacks. You log information and adjust. This emotional neutrality is not coldness, it's command. You're no longer ruled by spikes. You operate on trends. Trends are where power hides. Anyone can look impressive for a moment. Few can be reliable over time. Reliability is boring to those addicted to excitement. It's priceless to those who understand outcomes. This is why serious opportunities arrive quietly. Not in public announcements, but in private conversations. People seek what endures. You also become selective about proximity, not out of arrogance, but alignment. You recognize that environments shape behavior. You choose rooms that stretch you instead of soothing you. You don't need constant agreement. You need honest friction. Friction sharpens. Comfort dulls. You choose sharpness. At this point, guilt has little to work with. You've already paid the social cost. You've already endured misunderstanding. There's nothing left to threaten you with. When guilt loses leverage, clarity expands. You see choices plainly. You decide without rehearsing excuses. Decision-making becomes faster because you're no longer negotiating with fear. Your language reflects this. Fewer qualifiers, fewer apologies, clear requests, clear refusals. You respect other people's time because you respect your own. Respect invites respect, not immediately, consistently. This is also where nostalgia may try again. Memories of ease, of belonging without effort, of days when no one questioned your direction because you had none. Nostalgia edits out the dissatisfaction that drove you to change. Don't romanticize the cage. Remember why you left. You're not chasing separation anymore. Separation happened as a consequence of commitment. You didn't announce it. You didn't demand it. You earned it through repetition. And now, with that distance, you can see clearly. Average is no longer tempting, not because you're superior, but because you're honest about the cost. You've learned that a comfortable life can still be a compromised one, and you've chosen not to compromise the one thing that can't be replaced, your potential. This is where endurance becomes your advantage. You don't flinch, you don't rush, you keep going. And in a world that quits early, endurance is dominance. You can feel the difference now. It's not excitement, it's steadiness. A calm internal pressure that doesn't need to release itself through words or reactions. This is what most people mistake for boredom, but boredom is only discomfort without direction. What you're experiencing is alignment, and alignment is rare. At this stage, you begin to see how average thinking depends on constant stimulation, new goals, new plans, new identities, endless reinvention without follow-through. It feels productive, but it's just motion masking avoidance. You've stepped out of that loop. You no longer need novelty to feel alive. You need progress, and progress doesn't shout. It accumulates. Machiavelli understood that people are controlled more easily when their attention is scattered. Scattered attention produces scattered effort. Scattered effort produces predictable outcomes. Average thrives in distraction. Power grows in focus. By narrowing your inputs, you've widened your control. You decide what enters your mind. You decide what deserves your energy. That decision alone separates trajectories. Notice how your relationship with effort has changed. You're no longer heroic about it. No dramatic pushes, no burnout cycles. Just measured, repeatable execution. This is why your confidence doesn't spike or crash anymore. It's not tied to emotion. It's tied to identity. You do the work because that's who you are now. You may also notice how people who once tried to pull you back have grown quieter. Not because they agree with you, but because persistence removes debate. Consistency is disarming. When someone keeps showing up without needing validation, the arguments lose momentum. Average culture feeds on reaction. You've stopped feeding it. This is also where the last illusions fall away. You stop believing that success will feel dramatic. You stop waiting for a moment where everything suddenly clicks. Instead, you recognize that the click already happened quietly, when you chose not to quit, not to explain, not to retreat. The rest is just follow-through. Here's something important to lock in right now. Like this. Not for engagement, but to mark the point where you recognize that discipline, not motivation, is what carried you past average. Your emotional range continues to narrow, but not in a limiting way. In a stabilizing way. You don't swing wildly between confidence and doubt. Doubt still appears, but it no longer dictates behavior. You treat it like background noise. You proceed anyway. This is emotional dominance, not suppression, but command. Average people wait for certainty. You move with clarity. Certainty is comfort. Clarity is direction. Direction doesn't require guarantees. It requires commitment. You've committed, and that commitment has changed how you experience time. Days feel intentional. Weeks feel connected. Effort feels cumulative instead of draining. You're also less impressed by appearances now. Titles, popularity, noise. You've seen how easily they detach from substance. You look for patterns instead. Who keeps showing up? Who compounds effort? Who stays calm under pressure? These signals matter more than performance ever could. As this perspective settles, ambition stops feeling urgent. It becomes patient. You don't need to prove speed. You trust endurance. Endurance outlasts trends. It outlasts moods. It outlasts average. And in this space, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop asking whether you're ahead or behind. That comparison belonged to the crowd. You're playing a different game now, one measured by integrity, consistency, and long-term leverage. Average can't compete here because average doesn't think this far ahead. You do. That long view changes how you experience pressure. Pressure no longer feels like a threat. it feels like information. You read it, adjust, and continue. Where others tense up or rush, you slow down. Slowing down at the right moments is power. It allows you to see angles most people miss because they're busy reacting. You start to notice how often average lives in urgency. Deadlines that feel artificial, crises that repeat, conversations that circle without resolution. Urgency keeps people obedient because it collapses their horizon. When everything feels immediate, nothing can be built deliberately. You've widened your horizon. With a wider horizon, urgency loses its grip. Machiavelli understood this dynamic instinctively. Those who control timing control outcomes. When you're not easily rushed, you negotiate better with people, with opportunities, with yourself. You don't accept the first option just to end discomfort. You let discomfort sit until clarity appears. That patience is not passive, it's strategic. Your standards are doing quiet work now. They filter opportunities before you ever engage. You say no without drama. You disengage without resentment. You choose what aligns and ignore what doesn't. This selectivity isn't elitism, it's stewardship. You're protecting the one resource that compounds everything else. Focus. Average culture will still try to pull you back occasionally. It does this through nostalgia, through fear of missing out, through appeals to loyalty. Remember how things used to be? Don't forget your roots. These phrases sound warm, but they're often attempts to freeze you in an old role. Growth threatens roles. When you outgrow one, someone else has to adjust or let go. You let go, quietly, without speeches, without bitterness. Letting go is easier when you're not asking others to understand. Understanding is optional. Direction is not. You move forward because you've learned what happens when you don't. This is also where responsibility shifts fully inward. You stop blaming circumstances, systems, or people. Not because they're fair, but because blame weakens leverage. Control returns when responsibility does. If you own the outcome, you can change the inputs. Average prefers excuses because excuses preserve comfort. You prefer agency because agency creates options. You may notice how rarely you complain now. Complaining drains energy without changing direction. You replace it with adjustment. Adjustments are small, specific, and repeatable. They don't require emotion. They require attention. Attention is something you've learned to manage. Your presence carries less need and more intent. People feel it. They respond with fewer tests and clearer terms. This isn't because you demand respect. It's because you no longer negotiate your worth. Worth isn't argued. It's demonstrated over time. There's a calm confidence in knowing you can handle setbacks. Not because you expect them, but because you've built the habits to respond. Habits turn shocks into steps. Average breaks under surprise because it never prepared. You prepared quietly, long before it mattered. As you approach the end of this journey, understand this. Nothing dramatic is supposed to happen here. No explosion, no applause. Just a steady sense that your life is now governed by principles instead of pressure. Principles endure, pressure passes. You didn't escape average by fighting it. You outgrew it by refusing to live on its terms. And once you refuse those terms consistently, average has no leverage left, only memories of a version of you that no longer exists. And that's the quiet ending most people never expect. There's no dramatic finish line when you leave average behind. No applause. No sudden shift in how the world treats you. What changes is internal. You wake up without the low-grade anxiety that used to follow you. You make decisions without rehearsing how they'll be received. You move through your day with intent instead of reaction. That's when you know the transition is complete. You understand now why most people remain average for life. Not because they lack intelligence, opportunity, or even ambition, but because they never revoke fear's authority. They let fear decide what's reasonable. They let fear define loyalty. They let fear set the ceiling and then call it reality. Average becomes permanent the moment fear is allowed to vote. You didn't eliminate fear. You learned to outrank it. Fear still appears, but it no longer commands. It informs, and then it steps aside. That's emotional sovereignty. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let it choose for you. This is where your standards become self-sustaining. You do the work whether anyone notices or not. You maintain discipline when motivation fades. You don't need reminders of who you're becoming because your habits already know. Identity follows behavior, not intention. You built the behavior. The identity followed. You also see how power actually functions. It's not domination, it's direction. The ability to move consistently toward a chosen outcome without being pulled off course by noise, guilt, or approval. Most people mistake power for force. In reality, power is endurance paired with clarity. Machiavelli understood that history is shaped by those willing to be uncomfortable long enough to become inevitable. Inevitability doesn't shout. It arrives quietly after most people have quit. You didn't quit. You stayed when it was boring. You continued when it was lonely. You held the line when no one was watching. That's why average couldn't keep you. Look at how simple things feel now. Not easy, simple. Fewer distractions, fewer internal arguments, clearer priorities, clearer boundaries. This simplicity isn't minimalism for its own sake. It's the byproduct of refusing to negotiate your potential away for social peace. You don't need to convince anyone of anything. Those who understand will recognize it. Those who don't were never meant to come this far with you. That's not arrogance. That's acceptance. Acceptance of reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. From here on, your responsibility is maintenance and expansion. Protect the patterns, guard the focus, respect the process. You already know what happens when you drift. You've seen the cost of comfort. You've felt the weight of compromise. You won't mistake those for safety again. So carry this forward with quiet confidence. Choose discipline over distraction, direction over approval, long-term leverage over short-term comfort. Not because it makes you better than others, but because it makes you honest with yourself. And before you go, seal this. Commitment, subscribe, and comment or share what shifted for you. Not for validation, but to mark the moment you stopped protecting average and started honoring what you're capable of becoming. Because once you see Machiavelli's truth clearly, there's no returning to a life built on fear, but command. Average people wait for certainty. You move with clarity. Certainty is comfort. Clarity is direction. Direction doesn't require guarantees. It requires commitment. You've committed, and that commitment has changed how you experience time. Days feel intentional. Weeks feel connected. Effort feels cumulative instead of draining. You're also less impressed by appearances now. Titles, popularity, noise. You've seen how easily they detach from substance. You look for patterns instead. Who keeps showing up? Who compounds effort? Who stays calm under pressure? These signals matter more than performance ever could. As this perspective settles, ambition stops feeling urgent. It becomes patient. You don't need to prove speed. You trust endurance. Endurance outlasts trends. It outlasts moods. It outlasts average. And in this space, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop asking whether you're ahead or behind. That comparison belonged to the crowd. You're playing a different game now, one measured by integrity, consistency, and long-term leverage. Average can't compete here because average doesn't think this far ahead. You do. That long view changes how you experience pressure. Pressure no longer feels like a threat. It feels like information. You read it, adjust, and continue. Where others tense up or rush, You slow down. Slowing down at the right moments is power. It allows you to see angles most people miss because they're busy reacting. You start to notice how often average lives in urgency. Deadlines that feel artificial, crises that repeat, conversations that circle without resolution. Urgency keeps people obedient because it collapses their horizon. When everything feels immediate, nothing can be built deliberately. You've widened your horizon. With a wider horizon, urgency loses its grip. Machiavelli understood this dynamic instinctively. Those who control timing control outcomes. When you're not easily rushed, you negotiate better with people, with opportunities, with yourself. You don't accept the first option just to end discomfort. You let discomfort sit until clarity appears. That patience is not passive, it's strategic. Your standards are doing quiet work now. They filter opportunities before you ever engage. You say no without drama. You disengage without resentment. You choose what aligns and ignore what doesn't. This selectivity isn't elitism, it's stewardship. You're protecting the one resource that compounds everything else. Focus. Average culture will still try to pull you back occasionally. It does this through nostalgia, through fear of missing out, through appeals to loyalty. Remember how things used to be? Don't forget your roots. These phrases sound warm, but they're often attempts to freeze you in an old role. Growth threatens roles. When you outgrow one, someone else has to adjust or let go. You let go, quietly, without speeches, without bitterness. Letting go is easier when you're not asking others to understand. Understanding is optional. Direction is not. You move forward because you've learned what happens when you don't. This is also where responsibility shifts fully inward. You stop blaming circumstances, systems, or people. Not because they're fair, but because blame weakens leverage. Control returns when responsibility does. If you own the outcome, you can change the inputs. Average prefers excuses because excuses preserve comfort. You prefer agency because agency creates options. You may notice how rarely you complain now. Complaining drains energy without changing direction. You replace it with adjustment. Adjustments are small, specific, and repeatable. They don't require emotion. They require attention. Attention is something you've learned to manage. Your presence carries less need and more intent. People feel it. They respond with fewer tests and clearer terms. This isn't because you demand respect. It's because you no longer negotiate your worth. Worth isn't argued. It's demonstrated over time. There's a calm confidence in knowing you can handle setbacks. Not because you expect them, but because you've built the habits to respond. Habits turn shocks into steps. Average breaks under surprise because it never prepared. You prepared quietly, long before it mattered. As you approach the end of this journey, understand this. Nothing dramatic is supposed to happen here. No explosion, no applause. Just a steady sense that your life is now governed by principles instead of pressure. Principles endure, pressure passes. You didn't escape average by fighting it. You outgrew it by refusing to live on its terms. And once you refuse those terms consistently, average has no leverage left, only memories of a version of you that no longer exists. And that's the quiet ending most people never expect. There's no dramatic finish line when you leave average behind. No applause. No sudden shift in how the world treats you. What changes is internal. You wake up without the low-grade anxiety that used to follow you. You make decisions without rehearsing how they'll be received. You move through your day with intent instead of reaction. That's when you know the transition is complete. You understand now why most people remain average for life. Not because they lack intelligence, opportunity, or even ambition, but because they never revoke fear's authority. They let fear decide what's reasonable. They let fear define loyalty. They let fear set the ceiling and then call it reality. Average becomes permanent the moment fear is allowed to vote. You didn't eliminate fear, you learned to outrank it. Fear still appears, but it no longer commands. It informs, and then it steps aside. That's emotional sovereignty. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let it choose for you. This is where your standards become self-sustaining. You do the work whether anyone notices or not. You maintain discipline when motivation fades. You don't need reminders of who you're becoming because your habits already know. Identity follows behavior, not intention. You built the behavior. The identity followed. You also see how power actually functions. It's not domination, it's direction. The ability to move consistently toward a chosen outcome without being pulled off course by noise, guilt, or approval. Most people mistake power for force. In reality, power is endurance paired with clarity. Machiavelli understood that history is shaped by those willing to be uncomfortable long enough to become inevitable. Inevitability doesn't shout. It arrives quietly after most people have quit. You didn't quit. You stayed when it was boring. You continued when it was lonely. You held the line when no one was watching. That's why average couldn't keep you. Look at how simple things feel now. Not easy, simple. Fewer distractions, fewer internal arguments, clearer priorities, clearer boundaries. This simplicity isn't minimalism for its own sake. It's the byproduct of refusing to negotiate your potential away for social peace. You don't need to convince anyone of anything. Those who understand will recognize it. Those who don't were never meant to come this far with you. That's not arrogance. That's acceptance. Acceptance of reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. From here on, your responsibility is maintenance and expansion. Protect the patterns, guard the focus, respect the process. You already know what happens when you drift. You've seen the cost of comfort. You've felt the weight of compromise. You won't mistake those for safety again. So carry this forward with quiet confidence. Choose discipline over distraction, direction over approval, long-term leverage over short-term comfort. Not because it makes you better than others, but because it makes you honest with yourself. And before you go, seal this. Commitment, subscribe, and comment or share what shifted for you. Not for validation, but to mark the moment you stopped protecting average and started honoring what you're capable of becoming. Because once you see Machiavelli's truth clearly, there's no returning to a life built on fear.